The edge of the cliff bit into Margaret's worn boots as she stared down at the churning river below. The Wyoming wind whipped her black morning dress against her legs, and her fingers trembled around the small leather pouch containing her wedding ring, the last thing of value she owned. 3 months a widow, 2 weeks without food, 1 day from madness. Gold can't fill an empty belly when you're dead at the bottom of that gorge, a voice rumbled behind her. Margaret spun, nearly losing her footing. A mountain of a man stood 20 feet back, hands raised peacefully. He was massive, shoulders broad as an ox yoke, arms thick with muscle beneath rolled shirt sleeves, a dark beard framing a weathered face, but his eyes, gray as storm clouds, held no threat. Before we continue with Margaret's journey, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality stories from the Wild West. Also, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? I wasn't planning to jump, Margaret lied, her voice hoarse from disuse. Good. He took a careful step closer. Because that river's colder than a banker's heart. And you don't strike me as a woman who quits easy. You don't know anything about me. I know you've walked 15 miles in those ruined boots. I know you haven't eaten in days. Your hands shake, and you keep swaying. And I know you're standing on my land, which means you're either lost or looking for something. Margaret's pride flared hot in her chest. I can pay, I have. I don't want your ring. He lowered his hands slowly. Name's Isaiah Cole. I run cattle up here, and I'm down a cook since mine ran off with a gambler last month. You cook? Yes. Then we got ourselves an arrangement. You work, you eat, you sleep in the spare cabin. No charity, expectations beyond honest labor. His gray eyes held hers steadily, and no jumping off my property. Something in his matter-of-fact tone cracked the ice around her heart. Margaret nodded once, sharp. Isaiah gestured toward a pine-studded trail. Ranch is 2 miles that way. Can you make it, or do you need help? I can walk. Didn't ask if you could. Asked if you needed help. Pride's fine, but stubbornness'll kill you up here. When she didn't answer, he simply started walking, matching his long strides to her limping pace without comment. The Cole Ranch sprawled across a high valley, a sturdy log house, 2 cabins, corrals holding a dozen horses, and cattle dotting the meadow beyond. Isaiah led her to the smaller cabin, its interior clean but sparse. A bed, a stove, a table. Water pumps out back. Suppers at sundown. I'll expect you at the main house. If you're not there, I'll assume you changed your mind. He paused at the door. One more thing, Mrs. Hayes, Margaret Hayes. Mrs. Hayes, whatever brought you to that cliff edge, it ain't following you here. You understand? This ranch is safe ground. After he left, Margaret collapsed onto the bed and wept for the first time since her husband's funeral. She woke to the smell of her own unwashed skin and burning shame. The sun hung low, nearly supper time. Margaret scrubbed herself raw with cold pump water, twisted her dark hair into a severe knot, and walked to the main house on trembling legs. Isaiah stood at the stove, incompetently stirring something that might have been stew. He glanced up. You look steadier. I'm sorry I fell asleep. You should have rested. Now you can take over this mess before I poison us both. He stepped aside, handing her the wooden spoon with a rueful expression. Fair warning. I can shoot a grouse at 100 yards, but can't cook the damn thing to save my life. Despite everything, Margaret's lips twitched. She tasted the stew and winced. You've salted this enough to cure leather. Told you. She spent the next hour salvaging the meal, acutely aware of Isaiah moving through the house behind her, stoking the fire, setting the table, his presence a constant, warm weight in the room. When they finally sat down to eat, he consumed 3 bowls without speaking, then leaned back with a satisfied grunt. "You just earned your keep, Mrs. Hayes." It was barely edible. "Compared to my cooking, you're a French chef." He studied her with those steady gray eyes. "You want to talk about what happened?" "No." "Fair enough, but if you change your mind, I'm a decent listener. Had a wife once. Lost her to cholera 6 years back, along with our daughter. Some days I understand that cliff edge real well." The confession, delivered without self-pity, stole Margaret's breath. "I'm sorry." "Me too. But we're both still here, which means we've got more living to do, whether we feel like it or not." Isaiah stood, collecting the dishes. "You wash, I'll dry. Then you should sleep. Sunup comes early on a ranch." The routine became their language. Margaret woke before dawn, cooked breakfast while Isaiah tended the stock. They ate in companionable silence. Then she'd clean while he rode out to check fence lines and move cattle. She'd spend midday preserving food, mending clothes, tasks that filled the hollow spaces grief had carved. Evenings brought supper, quiet conversation, and the slow unfurling of trust. 3 weeks in, Isaiah started teaching her to ride. "City woman won't survive up here on foot," he explained, saddling a gentle mare named Bess. "And before you argue, this ain't charity, it's practical. If I get hurt out on the range, I need someone who can reach me." Margaret's first attempt ended with her face first in the dirt, Isaiah's booming laugh echoing off the mountains. "You ride a horse like you're sitting at a tea party, Mrs. Hayes. Loosen up." "I'm trying." She glared up at him, dirt on her cheek, and found herself smiling despite her bruised pride. He offered his hand, rough with calluses, warm as sunlight. Their fingers touched, and something electric passed between them. Isaiah's smile faded. He pulled her up too quickly, stepping back like she'd burned him. "Again," he said roughly, "and this time, trust the horse." By the end of the month, Margaret could ride well enough to accompany Isaiah on short trips. She learned to read weather in the sky, track game through morning dew, shoot tin cans off fence posts. Her hands toughened, her appetite returned. The haunted look faded from her eyes. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching stars emerge, Isaiah asked, "What was his name? Your husband?" Margaret's chest tightened. "Thomas. Thomas Hayes." "Good man?" No, the word escaped before she could stop it. "He drank. When he drank, he had a temper. The doctor said his heart gave out, but I think the whiskey poisoned him from the inside." Isaiah's jaw clenched. "Did he hurt you?" "Does it matter? He's dead." "Matters to me." His voice dropped to gravel. "Did he hurt you, Margaret?" The use of her first name, the gentleness wrapped in fury, broke her. "Yes, not always, but enough. And I stayed because I had nowhere else to go, and I thought it was what I deserved." "Look at me." Isaiah waited until her eyes met his. "You didn't deserve that. No one does. And if that son of a bitch wasn't already dead, I'd kill him myself. I'd ride down this mountain and make him answer for every bruise he left on you. He's gone. It doesn't matter anymore. It matters because you're still carrying it." Isaiah's hand moved toward hers on the porch railing, then stopped, hovering. "Can I?" Margaret nodded, throat tight. His fingers covered hers, careful, asking permission with every breath. The touch seared through her, terrifying and perfect. "You're not property, Margaret. You're a person. a strong, brave person who survived hell and came out the other side. Don't let his ghost steal that from you. She turned her hand over, palm to palm, and whispered, I'm afraid. Of what? Of wanting this, of wanting you. Isaiah's breath caught. I made myself a promise after Sarah died. Said I wouldn't let anyone close again, because losing her nearly destroyed me. But you walked onto my land half dead and somehow brought me back to life. He lifted their joined hands, pressing his forehead to her knuckles. I'm terrified too, but I'm more terrified of letting you go. Isaiah. Thunder cracked overhead. Rain began falling in sheets, driving them inside. They stood dripping in the kitchen, awareness crackling between them like lightning. Margaret shivered, cold, nervous, alive in ways she'd forgotten existed. You should get out of those wet clothes, Isaiah said hoarsely. I'll stoke the fire. But neither moved. Margaret took a step forward, then another. Isaiah stood frozen, hands clenched at his sides, every muscle coiled tight. If I take one more step, I won't come back. Margaret whispered, giving him the choice. I'll be here, with you, for real. Isaiah's storm-gray eyes blazed. He reached out his hand, steady and sure. Then don't. The distance between them evaporated. Isaiah's arms came around her carefully, as if she might shatter. But Margaret pressed closer, desperate for his warmth, his solidity, his goodness. She tilted her face up, and he lowered his head with agonizing slowness, giving her every chance to retreat. Their lips met, soft as prayer. Isaiah made a low sound in his chest, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other spanning her waist. The kiss deepened, turned hungry. Months of loneliness and longing poured into the meeting of mouths and tangling of breath. Go slow, Margaret gasped against his lips. It's been a not... Shh. Isaiah's thumb traced her cheekbone, his touch reverent. I'll die before I hurt you. We go at your pace, Margaret, just your pace. They undressed each other with trembling hands, Isaiah whispering praise against her skin. You're beautiful. So damn beautiful. I've got you. I've got you. Until Margaret wept from the sheer relief of being touched with tenderness instead of rage. Afterward, they lay tangled in his bed, rain drumming on the roof. Isaiah traced the faint scars on her ribs, Thomas's legacy, his jaw tight. I wish I could take these away. You already have, Margaret said simply, by showing me what kindness feels like. He pulled her closer, his heart steady beneath her cheek. Stay with me, not as my cook, as my partner, my wife, if you'll have me. Isaiah, we barely know each other. I know you're brave enough to stand on a cliff edge and strong enough to step back. I know you make terrible coffee but incredible biscuits. I know the way you hum when you're concentrating, and how you bite your lip when you're trying not to smile. His voice roughened. I know I was half alive until you showed up, and I don't want to go back to that emptiness. Do you? Margaret's answer was a kiss that tasted of salt and hope. The trouble arrived 3 days later in the form of a man on a lathered horse. Thomas's brother, Gerald Hayes. Margaret saw him from the garden and dropped her basket, beans scattering across the dirt. Thought you could hide from family, Margaret? Gerald dismounted, his smile sharp. Thomas left debts. His widow's responsible for them. You're coming back to Denver to settle accounts. I don't owe you anything. Margaret's voice shook, but she held her ground. Thomas drank away his own money. That's not my burden. The law says different. You're still a Hayes, and Hayes' debts are family matters. Gerald's hand rested on his pistol. Now we can do this peaceful, or you can get the hell off my land. Isaiah emerged from the barn, rifle cradled casually in his arms. The lady said no. Time for you to ride out. Gerald sneered. This your mountain man? You work fast, Margaret. Thomas barely cold in the ground. Isaiah's rifle came up smooth, aimed at Gerald's chest. Next words out of your mouth better be goodbye, friend. You'd shoot me over some used-up widow? The rifle didn't waver. I'd shoot you for trespassing. What happens to Margaret is her choice, not yours, not anymore. Gerald's eyes darted between them, calculating odds he didn't like. This ain't over. She's got legal obligations. Then send a lawyer with papers. But you don't come back here. Clear? After Gerald rode off cursing, Margaret sank to her knees, shaking. Isaiah set the rifle aside and knelt beside her, gathering her into his arms. He can't take you. I won't let him. He's right about the debts. Under the law, I'm responsible. Then we'll pay them. I've got money saved. We'll clear Thomas's debts and cut you free of that name forever. That's your money, Isaiah. Your future. You are my future. He cupped her face, fierce and tender. We're in this together, Margaret. Together, you understand? She nodded against his palms, the word echoing between them like a vow. Together. But Gerald wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, he returned with 3 rough men, arriving at dusk when Isaiah was checking the north pasture. Margaret was closing the chicken coop when they rode into the yard. Told you I'd be back, Gerald announced. Isaiah Cole's got no legal claim on you. Time to settle your debts, Margaret. I'm not going anywhere with you. Wasn't asking. Gerald nodded, and 2 men grabbed her arms. Margaret screamed, fighting, but they were stronger, dragging her toward their horses. The 3rd man drew his pistol, scanning for Isaiah. A rifle shot cracked the air. The man with the pistol yelped, his weapon spinning from his hand. Isaiah burst from the tree line on horseback, Bess's hooves thundering across the meadow. He leaped from the saddle while the mare was still moving, tackling one of Margaret's captors. They went down in a tangle of fists and fury. Gerald pulled his own gun, but Margaret drove her elbow into his stomach, then grabbed a fence post and swung it at his head. He dropped, stunned. The fight was brutal and short. Isaiah fought with the precision of a man defending everything he loved, each punch calculated to disable. When the last of Gerald's hired men fled on foot, Isaiah turned to Gerald, breathing hard, knuckles bloody. You got one chance, Isaiah growled. Ride out now, or I bury you on this mountain and no one ever finds the body. Your choice. Gerald staggered to his horse, clutching his bleeding head. You're both crazy, and you're done. If I see you near this ranch again, there won't be a conversation. Isaiah's eyes were cold as January snow. Margaret Hayes is under my protection. That means something in these mountains. Spread the word. After they were gone, Margaret sagged against the fence, adrenaline draining away. Isaiah crossed to her in 3 long strides, hands running over her arms, her face, checking for injuries. Did they hurt you? Margaret, look at me. Did they hurt you? No, I'm fine. You came back. Always. He pulled her against his chest, his heart racing beneath her cheek. I'll always come back for you. Always. That night, as they tended each other's bruises, Margaret said quietly, I want to marry you. Not because I'm afraid, or because I need protection. Because I choose you, Isaiah Cole. I choose this life, this ranch, this future. I choose us. Isaiah's smile could have lit the whole valley. Then let's not wait. There's a circuit preacher comes through every month. He's due in town next week. They married on a crisp October morning, on the ridge above the ranch where Margaret had once stood, contemplating the end. The preacher was a jovial man who asked no questions about the rush. Isaiah wore his best shirt, hair slicked back, looking nervous as a boy. Margaret wore a simple blue dress she'd sewn herself, wildflowers in her hair. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," Isaiah cupped Margaret's face like she was made of spun glass and kissed her with a gentleness that brought tears to her eyes. "Together," he whispered against her lips. "Together," she promised back. The winter that followed was hard. Blizzards buried the ranch for weeks at a time, but they weathered it, wrapped in each other's warmth. Isaiah taught Margaret to track game in snow, and she taught him to read the books she'd salvaged from her old life. They talked through long nights, sharing dreams and fears, building a partnership stitch by careful stitch. In spring, Margaret discovered she was pregnant. Isaiah wept when she told him, then laughed, then spun her around the kitchen until she was dizzy and laughing too. "A baby, our baby. Are you happy?" "Happier than I've got any right to be." He knelt, pressing his forehead to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. Your mama's the bravest person I know, and I promise to spend every day of my life making sure you both know you're loved." Their daughter was born in December, during a snowstorm that trapped them in the cabin for 3 days. Isaiah delivered her himself, his hands sure despite his terror, whispering encouragement until Margaret's cries turned to a baby's first wail. "She's perfect," Isaiah breathed, placing the tiny squalling bundle in Margaret's arms. "You're both perfect." They named her Sarah Hope, Sarah for Isaiah's first daughter, Hope for the future they'd built from ashes. Watching Isaiah cradle his daughter, singing soft nonsense while Margaret rested, she understood that she'd been right on that cliff edge months ago. One more step, and she wouldn't have come back. But Isaiah had reached out his hand, and she'd taken it, and together they'd built something more beautiful than she'd ever imagined possible. 10 years later, Margaret Cole stood on that same ridge, watching her 3 children play in the meadow below. Sarah Hope, almost 10, taught her younger brother James to skip stones while baby Emma napped in Margaret's arms. Isaiah rode up the trail, dismounted, and wrapped his arm around her waist. "Ever regret taking that last step?" he asked, echoing that long-ago moment. Margaret leaned into his solid warmth, breathing in the scent of sage and home. "Not for a single second." "You?" "Only that I didn't reach out my hand sooner." Isaiah kissed her temple, then the baby's downy head. "Though I figure we found each other exactly when we were supposed to." Below them, the children's laughter rang out like bells. Margaret closed her eyes, feeling the sun on her face, her husband's steady presence, the weight of her daughter in her arms, all the beautiful, ordinary miracles of a life she'd once thought impossible. She'd walked to the edge of the world and chosen to step back. And in that single moment of courage, she'd found everything worth living for. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late spring, carried by a postal rider who'd come all the way from Cheyenne. Margaret was hanging laundry when Isaiah brought it to her, his face unreadable. "It's addressed to you," he said quietly, "from a lawyer's office in Denver." Margaret's hands stilled on the clothespin. Denver, the city she'd fled from, the life she'd left behind. She took the envelope with trembling fingers, Isaiah's presence solid and warm at her back as she broke the seal. The words swam before her eyes: estate, inheritance, Thomas Hayes' uncle, deceased, sole surviving heir. What is it? Isaiah's hand found her shoulder. Thomas's uncle died. He was wealthy, owned a shipping company. He had no children, and Thomas was his only nephew. Margaret's voice sounded distant to her own ears. It says I'm the sole heir. There's property, investments, money. She looked up at Isaiah, stunned. A lot of money. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes searching hers. What do you want to do? I don't know. I never knew Thomas had wealthy family. He never mentioned. She pressed her fingers to her temples. The lawyer says I need to come to Denver to sign papers, settle the estate. It could take weeks. Then we'll go to Denver. Isaiah's tone was matter-of-fact, but she heard the tension beneath. Together. Isaiah, the ranch can survive a few weeks. I'll hire Tom Brackett's boy to watch the place. This is important, Margaret. This is your inheritance, your decision to make. He tilted her chin up gently. And I'll be right beside you while you make it. 3 days later, they rode into Denver, with Sarah Hope bundled between them on Isaiah's horse. The city assaulted Margaret's senses after months of mountain silence. The noise, the crowds, the smell of coal smoke and horse manure. Isaiah's jaw grew tighter with every block, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. The lawyer's office was elegant, all dark wood and leather chairs. Mr. Pemberton was a thin man with spectacles, who looked at Isaiah's worn trail clothes with barely concealed disdain. Mrs. Hayes, I must say we were surprised to locate you. Your husband's debts were considerable, and many assumed you'd perished. Pemberton's eyes flicked to Isaiah. And this is my husband, Isaiah Cole. Pemberton's eyebrows rose. I see. Well, the estate is valued at approximately $70,000. There will need to be a hearing before a judge. Margaret's stomach dropped. Gerald, of course. When? 3 weeks. You'll need to remain in Denver until then, I'm afraid. The judge will want to question you about your marriage to Thomas, your whereabouts since his death, and your current situation. Isaiah's hand found Margaret's beneath the table, squeezed hard. We'll stay. But understand this, Mr. Pemberton. Margaret earned every cent of that inheritance by surviving Thomas Hayes's cruelty. His brother doesn't get to profit from the same name that brought her nothing but pain. Pemberton blinked, taken aback by the steel in Isaiah's voice. That will be for the judge to determine, Mr. Cole. They found lodging in a modest boarding house, a world away from the elegant hotels Margaret had once known. That night, as Sarah Hope slept between them, Isaiah stared at the ceiling, his jaw tight. Say it, Margaret whispered. Whatever you're thinking. This city, these people, they look at you like your property to be traded and managed. His voice was rough. And that money, it's enough to change everything. You could buy a house here, start a business, live like a lady again. You don't need a broke rancher from the mountains anymore. Margaret rose on her elbow, grabbing his face with both hands. Listen to me, Isaiah Cole. I don't want this money. I don't want this city. I want you and Sarah and our ranch and the life we built together. This inheritance, she gestured around the shabby room, it's just money. It can't hold me at night. It can't make me laugh. It can't love our daughter the way you do. But it could give you security, give Sarah opportunities. We have security. We have each other. She kissed him hard, pouring certainty into the connection. Whatever the judge decides, we go home together. Promise me you won't forget that. Isaiah pulled her close, his breath shaky against her hair. Together, I promise. The next morning, they encountered Gerald Hayes on the street outside a restaurant. He'd gained weight. His face florid with drink even at midday. His eyes narrowed when he saw them. Well, well, the grieving widow and her mountain savage. Gerald's smile was ugly. Enjoy your last days of comfort, Margaret. That money's mine by right. No judge will give a fortune to a woman who abandoned her husband's memory to whore herself to some. Isaiah moved faster than Margaret had ever seen him, slamming Gerald against the brick wall, forearm across his throat. Finish that sentence, please. Gerald's face purpled, his hands clawing at Isaiah's arm. People stopped, staring. A police officer started moving toward them. Isaiah. Margaret's voice cut through the red haze. He's not worth it. Let him go. For a terrible moment, Isaiah didn't move. Then he released Gerald, stepping back with visible effort. Stay away from my wife. Last warning. Gerald coughed, straightening his jacket with shaking hands. You just assaulted me in front of witnesses. I'll have you arrested. Do it. Isaiah's smile was all teeth. I'll tell the judge exactly what you called Margaret. Let's see how that plays in court. The officer had reached them now, hand on his club. Problem here, gentlemen? No problem, officer. Margaret stepped between them, her voice steady. Just a family disagreement. We were just leaving. She took Isaiah's arm, feeling the tremor of leashed violence in his muscles, and guided him away. Sarah Hope, who'd been watching from the boarding house window, ran to meet them, her small face worried. Papa, are you angry? Isaiah scooped her up, the tension draining from his face. Not anymore, little bird, not anymore. But that night, lying awake while Isaiah's breathing deepened into sleep, Margaret wondered if Gerald was right. Not about the inheritance. She didn't care about that. But about bringing Isaiah and Sarah into this world of lawyers and judgments and old ghosts. Maybe she should have stayed on that cliff edge after all. The hearing took place in a mahogany-paneled courtroom that reeked of cigar smoke and old money. Judge Morrison was a severe man with white mutton chops, his expression revealing nothing as the lawyers presented their cases. Gerald's attorney painted Margaret as an opportunist who'd abandoned her marital home, neglected her wifely duties, and callously remarried within months of Thomas's death. She shows no respect for the Hayes name, Your Honor. My client, as Thomas Hayes's brother and a respected businessman, is clearly the appropriate heir. When it was Margaret's turn to testify, she walked to the stand on shaking legs, acutely aware of Isaiah's steady gaze from the gallery. The lawyer Pemberton had hired for her, a sharp woman named Mrs. Blackwell, approached with a kind smile. Cole, please tell the court about your marriage to Thomas Hayes. Margaret took a breath, then another. The courtroom waited. Thomas Hayes was a drunk and a bully, she said quietly. He beat me, not every day, but often enough that I learned to walk quietly, to speak carefully, to make myself small and unnoticeable. I stayed because I had nowhere to go, no money of my own, and because I believed the lie that it was my fault, that I'd provoked him somehow. Gerald half rose from his seat. Your Honor, these are vile accusations against a dead man who cannot defend. Sit down, Mr. Hayes. Judge Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. Continue, Mrs. Cole. When Thomas died, I tried to grieve. I tried to feel something other than relief. But his brother, she pointed at Gerald, came demanding money for debts Thomas had incurred. Money I didn't have. He threatened me, said I'd be arrested for Thomas's debts, thrown into debtor's prison. So I ran, And where did you run to? Mrs. Blackwell asked gently. To the edge of a cliff in Wyoming. I was going to jump. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Margaret's eyes found Isaiah, drew strength from his unwavering faith. I was starving, alone, and I couldn't see any other way out. And then Isaiah Cole found me. He offered me work, not charity. Respect, not pity. He showed me that I was worth saving, worth loving, worth building a life with. And you married him? I did. Because I love him. Because he's a good man who treats our daughter with tenderness and me with honor. Because he makes me want to wake up every morning and face the day. Her voice strengthened. Thomas Hayes gave me nothing but scars and nightmares. Isaiah Cole gave me back my life. So no, I don't honor Thomas's memory, and I don't owe the Hayes family anything. That inheritance, I'll take it or leave it. It doesn't matter. What matters is the family I chose, not the name I was forced to carry. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Then Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Hayes, stand up. Gerald rose, smirking. Let me be very clear, the judge said coldly. I have presided over enough cases in this city to recognize when a man is defending his brother's honor versus when he simply wants money he didn't earn. Your brother, by multiple accounts, was a violent drunkard. You, sir, have a reputation for gambling and poor business decisions. Mrs. Cole, meanwhile, has built a new life through honest work and personal courage. Gerald's smirk faded. The inheritance goes to Mrs. Margaret Cole, née Hayes, as the legal widow of Thomas Hayes. You have 30 days to vacate any claim on the estate. If you approach Mrs. Cole or her family again, I will have you charged with harassment. Are we clear? Your Honor, this is an outrage. 30 days, Mr. Hayes. Dismissed. Margaret stood on wooden legs as the courtroom erupted. Mrs. Blackwell was shaking her hand, saying something about paperwork and signatures. But all Margaret could see was Isaiah, pushing through the crowd toward her. He reached her and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet. You were magnificent, had breathed into her hair. So damn magnificent. Isaiah, what are we going to do with $70,000? He laughed, the sound bright with relief. Whatever you want, Margaret Cole. Whatever you want. 2 weeks later, after endless meetings with lawyers and bankers, Margaret stood in the office of the Denver Orphanage with Isaiah beside her and a bank draft in her hands. $20,000. The orphanage director breathed, staring at the check. Mrs. Cole, this is extraordinary. Use it to expand, to hire more staff, to make sure every child here has warm clothes, good food, and schooling. Margaret's voice was firm, and if any of them are being sent to families that mistreat them, you pull them back. No child should suffer what I suffered. I promise you, Mrs. Cole, we'll make every dollar count. Outside, Isaiah took her hand. That's the third donation this week. The women's shelter, the medical clinic, now the orphanage. You're going to give away the whole inheritance. Not all of it. I'm keeping enough to expand our ranch, buy more cattle, maybe hire some help, so you're not working yourself to death every winter. She smiled up at him. And I'm setting aside money for Sarah's education and for any other children we might have. But the rest? She shook her head. Thomas Hayes's money came from his uncle's shipping business, built on the backs of poor workers and immigrant labor. I'm going to make sure it does some good in the world, instead of just sitting in a bank making rich men richer. Isaiah cupped her face, his eyes shining. Have I mentioned lately that you're the most remarkable woman I've ever known? Not in the last hour, Margaret grinned. You're slipping, Mr. Cole. Then let me remedy that. He kissed her there on the Denver street, not caring who saw, and Margaret kissed him back with the fierce joy of a woman who'd walk through hell and come out dancing. They left Denver the next morning, Sarah Hope chattering excitedly about going home to the mountains. As they rode out of the city, Margaret turned in her saddle for one last look at the skyline. Any regrets? Isaiah asked softly. Margaret thought of the girl she'd been, frightened, beaten down, convinced she deserved nothing better. Then she looked at the man beside her, the daughter giggling in his arms, the open road ahead leading to the life they'd built together. Not a single one, she said. Let's go home. The expansion of the Cole Ranch began that summer. With the inheritance money, Isaiah hired 3 ranch hands, young men from Denver's east side, looking for honest work and a fresh start. Margaret insisted they be paid fair wages and provided with decent housing. You're going to spoil them, Isaiah teased as she inspected the new bunkhouse he'd built, checking that each bed had warm quilts and sturdy frames. I'm treating them like human beings. There's a difference. She turned to him, hands on hips. These men are going to help build our future, Isaiah. The least we can do is make sure they're comfortable while they do it. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. This is why I love you. You've got the biggest heart in Wyoming. The ranch hands, Jack, Tom, and a quiet indigenous man named Running Wolf, proved their worth quickly. With extra help, Isaiah could finally implement all the improvements he'd dreamed of: better fencing, a proper barn, an expanded herd. The ranch began to thrive in ways it never had before. But success brought its own challenges. By autumn, word had spread about the Cole Ranch's prosperity. Cattle rustlers began testing their fences, stealing a steer here and there. Isaiah increased patrols, but the ranch was vast, and 4 men couldn't watch every acre. One October night, Margaret woke to gunshots. She bolted upright, heart hammering, reaching for Isaiah, but his side of the bed was empty. More shots, closer now, the sound of men shouting. Sarah Hope started crying in the next room. Margaret grabbed the rifle Isaiah kept by the door, checked that it was loaded, and rushed to her daughter. Shh, sweet girl, it's all right. Stay here, stay quiet. She pressed into the shadows by the window, rifle ready, and peered out. The barn was on fire, flames licking up the wooden walls. Dark figures moved in the yard, too many to count, and there, by the corral, Isaiah was fighting 3 men at once, his fists flying, even as blood streamed from a cut above his eye. Margaret's training kicked in. All those afternoons of target practice, Isaiah's patient instruction. She opened the window, took aim at the ground near the feet of the man behind Isaiah, and fired. The shot went wide, intentionally, but the noise and dirt spray made the rustler jump back. "Next one's in your leg," she shouted. "Get off our land!" Isaiah used the distraction to land a devastating punch that dropped 1 man. Running Wolf appeared from the bunkhouse, his own rifle blazing. Isaiah ran to the house, taking the porch steps 3 at a time. Margaret met him at the door, and he pulled her into his arms hard enough to hurt. "You all right, Sarah? We're fine. You're bleeding." "It's nothing." But his hands were shaking as they ran over her face, her arms, checking for injuries. "When I heard that shot, I thought," his voice broke, "I thought they'd gotten to you. I'm a decent shot now, remember? You taught me." She touched the cut above his eye gently. "Come inside. Let me clean this." They saved most of the barn, the hands forming a bucket brigade, while Isaiah pulled the horses to safety. By dawn, the fire was out, leaving a charred corner of the structure and the acrid smell of smoke. The sheriff arrived at noon, took their statements, and said he'd look into it, though his tone suggested he wouldn't try very hard. "Cattle rustlers are getting bold," he said, tipping his hat. "Might want to consider hiring more security, Cole. A ranch this prosperous is a tempting target." After he left, Isaiah stood surveying the damage, his jaw tight. "He's right. We need more men, better defenses, maybe even build a proper fence around the main house. Or we could sell some of the cattle, scale back." "Run away, you mean?" Isaiah turned to her, his eyes blazing. "Let these bastards scare us into giving up what we've built?" "I'm not saying give up. I'm saying Sarah's safety matters more than pride or profit." Margaret held his gaze steadily. "You know I'm right." The fight went out of him. He scrubbed his hands over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "I almost lost you last night. But you didn't. We're here. We're together." She took his hands, rough and battered from the fight. "We'll figure this out. We always do." Isaiah pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I don't know what I'd do without you. Good thing you'll never have to find out." They hired 4 more ranch hands and built a fence around the main house and the bunkhouses. Isaiah taught Margaret and the men a system of watch rotations and signal fires. Running Wolf, who'd grown up hunting in the mountains, showed them tracking techniques and how to read the land for signs of intruders. The rustlers tried twice more, but each time they were met with coordinated resistance. Word spread that the Cole Ranch was well defended, and the attacks stopped. By the time winter arrived, the ranch was more fortified than ever. Isaiah stood on the porch one snowy evening, Sarah Hope on his shoulders, watching Margaret help Tom's pregnant wife settle into one of the newly built family cabins. "You know what you've done?" he said to Margaret when she joined them. "You've built a community here. This isn't just a ranch anymore. It's a home for people who needed one." Margaret looked at the smoke rising from the various cabins, heard the laughter of the ranch hands' children playing in the snow, saw the lights glowing warm against the darkness. "We built it, Isaiah. Together." He shifted Sarah Hope to one arm and pulled Margaret close with the other. "Together," he echoed. "Always together." Spring brought new life to the ranch in more ways than one. Margaret discovered she was pregnant again, and Tom's wife gave birth to a healthy boy. The cattle herd had grown substantially, and Isaiah was negotiating with buyers from as far away as Chicago. But prosperity also brought unwelcome attention of a different kind. The woman arrived in a hired carriage on a Tuesday afternoon, dressed in expensive silks that were wildly impractical for ranch life. She was beautiful. Porcelain skin, golden hair, and cold blue eyes that swept over the ranch with obvious disdain. "I'm looking for Isaiah Cole," she announced to Jack, who'd approached the carriage cautiously. "Who's asking?" "Tell him Victoria Hartwell is here. He'll know who I am." Jack came to the house, his expression worried. "Boss, there's a fancy lady asking for you. Says her name's Victoria Hartwell." Isaiah, who'd been reviewing accounts at the kitchen table, went pale. The pencil dropped from his fingers. Margaret felt ice form in her stomach. "Isaiah? Who is she?" He stood slowly, like a man heading to his own execution. "My late wife's sister, Sarah's aunt." His voice was hollow. "I haven't seen her since Sarah's funeral 6 years ago." They went out together, Margaret's hand in Isaiah's. Victoria was examining the ranch buildings with a curl to her lip, But when she saw Isaiah, her expression shifted to something calculating. Isaiah, you look well. Mountain life clearly agrees with you. Her eyes slid to Margaret, dismissive. And this must be the new wife. Margaret, my wife's name is Margaret. Isaiah's voice was hard. What are you doing here, Victoria? I came to discuss family business. Perhaps we should speak privately. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of my wife. Victoria's smile was thin. Very well. I've come about Sarah, my niece. My sister would be horrified to know she's being raised in this rustic environment. I'm prepared to offer you compensation to allow me to take her back to Boston, where she can receive a proper education and upbringing. The words hit like a physical blow. Margaret felt Isaiah's hand tighten around hers, his whole body going rigid. Sarah is my daughter, he said, each word precise and deadly. She's not for sale. I'm not suggesting she is. But be reasonable, Isaiah. What kind of future does she have here? Married to some rough cowboy at 16? Living in poverty? Never knowing culture or refinement? Victoria's voice turned persuasive. I can give her everything. The best schools, society, opportunities. Isn't that what any parent would want? What I want is for my daughter to grow up knowing she's loved, knowing she's strong enough to face any challenge, knowing the value of honest work and good character. Isaiah stepped forward, his presence suddenly overwhelming. You want to take her back to Boston society? The same society that judges women by their dress and their dowry instead of their hearts? The same world that would teach her to be ornamental instead of useful? No, thank you. Victoria's eyes flashed. You're being selfish. Sarah deserves better than this rough life. Sarah deserves to be raised by people who love her. You didn't even come to visit in 6 years, Victoria. You didn't send letters or gifts or show any interest in her welfare. And now you show up, offering money, acting like she's property to be transferred? Margaret stepped forward, her voice shaking with fury. You can leave, now. And who are you to tell me? I'm her mother. The words came out fierce and certain. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. I'm the one who sits up with her when she has nightmares. I'm the one who teaches her to read and ride and think for herself. I'm the one who loves her unconditionally. Not because she fits into some social expectation, but because she's brilliant and kind and brave. Victoria's laugh was cruel. Ha ha, you're a rancher's wife playing house. You have no legal claim to Sarah. She's Isaiah's daughter, and if I petition the courts, then you'll lose. Isaiah's voice cut like a blade, because I'll tell any judge who asks that you abandoned your interest in Sarah years ago, that you showed up trying to buy her like livestock, and that she's happy here, healthy here, loved here. He put his arm around Margaret. Sarah has a mother, she has a family, and you're not part of it. Get off my land. Victoria's composure cracked, her face flushing with anger. You'll regret this, Isaiah. I have resources, connections, and I have a family worth fighting for. The choice seems clear to me. Isaiah gestured to her carriage. Goodbye, Victoria. After the carriage left in a cloud of dust, Isaiah sank onto the porch steps, his head in his hands. Margaret sat beside him, close and warm. She could really petition the courts, he said quietly. She's wealthy, well-connected. A judge might think Sarah would be better off. Then we'll fight it. We'll hire lawyers. Bring witnesses. Everyone on this ranch, everyone in town who knows Sarah, they'll all testify that she's happy and thriving. What if it's not enough? The fear in his voice broke her heart. What if they take her, Margaret? She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. Then we'll fight harder. We'll appeal. We'll move to Boston if we have to, and camp outside Victoria's house until she gives Sarah back." Her voice turned fierce. "That little girl is ours, Isaiah. Ours. And no judge, no amount of money, no Boston society matron is going to change that. Do you hear me?" He pulled her into his arms, holding on like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. "What did I ever do to deserve you? You reached out your hand when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to reach back." She kissed him softly. "Together, remember? Together," he whispered. "Always together." That night, they explained the situation to Sarah Hope, gently, carefully, making sure she understood that no matter what happened, she was loved and wanted. "Is Aunt Victoria going to take me away?" Sarah's voice was small, her eyes huge. "Not if we have anything to say about it," Margaret said firmly. "You're our daughter, Sarah Hope Cole, and Coles stick together." Sarah threw herself into Margaret's arms. "I don't want to go to Boston. I want to stay here with you and Papa and the ranch and the horses and Running Wolf teaching me to track and—" She started crying, and Isaiah gathered them both close. "You're not going anywhere, little bird," he rumbled. "I promise." "Don't make promises you can't keep, Papa." Sarah's voice was muffled against his shirt. Margaret met Isaiah's eyes over their daughter's head, saw the same determination she felt burning in her own chest. "He can keep this one, sweetheart. Trust us." The lawyer's letter arrived 2 weeks later, formal and terrifying. Victoria Hartwell had indeed petitioned for custody, claiming that Isaiah was an unfit father due to his isolated lifestyle and inappropriate remarriage. There would be a hearing in 60 days. Margaret watched Isaiah read the letter, watched the color drain from his face, and made a decision. "We're not going to that hearing unprepared," she said calmly. "We're going to gather every piece of evidence we have that shows Sarah is happy, healthy, and thriving. Letters from her school teacher, testimony from our neighbors, medical records showing she's well cared for. And we're going to hire the best damn lawyer we can find." With what money? The inheritance exists for exactly this reason. What good is money if we can't use it to protect our family? Margaret started pacing, her mind already working. "I'll contact Mrs. Blackwell, the lawyer from Denver. She was brilliant during the inheritance case. She'll know how to fight this." Isaiah caught her hand, pulled her close. "You're not alone in this. We'll fight together." "I know, but I also know you're terrified, and when you're scared, you get quiet and internal. So I'm taking charge of the legal strategy, and you're going to focus on keeping the ranch running and Sarah feeling safe. Agreed?" A smile ghosted across his face, fragile but real. "Agreed. God, I love you. Save it for after we win." Mrs. Blackwell arrived within a week, a whirlwind of efficiency and sharp questions. She interviewed Sarah with gentle thoroughness, spoke to every ranch hand and neighbor within a day's ride, and reviewed the ranch's finances with a critical eye. "This is a strong case," she said finally, sitting at the Cole kitchen table with papers spread before her. "Sarah is clearly well-adjusted. The ranch is prosperous, and both of you are exemplary parents. The problem is perception. Victoria Hartwell comes from old Boston money, and judges can be impressed by such things. So what do we do?" Margaret asked. "We present evidence that trumps social status, medical records showing Sarah's excellent health, academic records showing she's ahead of her peers in reading and mathematics, testimonials from the community about your character." Mrs. Blackwell fixed them with a shrewd look. "And we prepare Sarah to testify." "Absolutely not." Isaiah's voice was flat. I won't put my daughter through that. Mr. Cole, with respect, you may not have a choice. If the judge questions Sarah privately, which he likely will, she needs to be prepared. Not coached, but prepared to speak her truth clearly and without fear. Margaret reached across the table, took Isaiah's hand. She's stronger than you think. We both are. The weeks leading up to the hearing were agonizing. They tried to keep things normal for Sarah, but the strain showed in Isaiah's sleepless nights and the tight set of Margaret's jaw. The ranch hands picked up extra work without complaint, surrounding the family with quiet, steadfast support. 3 days before they were to leave for Denver, Running Wolf approached Isaiah in the barn. I want to come with you to the city. Testify. Isaiah looked up from the saddle he was mending. You don't have to do that. I know, but Sarah is Pack, and when Pack is threatened, we protect. Running Wolf's dark eyes were steady. I will tell the judge how she learns the old ways, how to track, to listen to the land, to honor all living things. This is knowledge worth more than city schools. Isaiah's throat worked. Thank you, my friend. On the morning of the hearing, Margaret dressed Sarah in her best dress, pale blue with white lace, made by Margaret's own hands. She braided Sarah's dark hair with ribbons and kissed her forehead. Remember, sweetheart, just tell the truth. Tell them how you feel, what you love, what makes you happy. That's all anyone can ask. What if I say the wrong thing? There is no wrong thing. Your truth is your truth. Margaret cupped her daughter's face. And whatever happens, we love you. Nothing changes that. The courtroom was smaller than Margaret expected, but no less intimidating. Victoria sat on the opposite side with her expensive lawyers, looking every inch the refined Boston lady. She didn't even glance at Sarah. The hearing began with testimony from Victoria's side, character witnesses describing her genteel home, her social connections, her ability to provide cultural advantages. It was all smooth and polished and completely bloodless. Then Mrs. Blackwell called her witnesses. Sarah's schoolteacher testified that the girl was reading at an 8th grade level, despite being only 9, and that her essays showed remarkable insight and creativity. The town doctor testified that Sarah was in perfect health, with no signs of neglect or mistreatment. 3 ranch hands, including Running Wolf, testified about Sarah's character, her kindness to animals, her fearlessness on horseback, her quick mind and compassionate heart. The local minister testified that the Cole family attended church regularly and were pillars of the community, known for their generosity and integrity. And then it was Margaret's turn. She walked to the stand with her head high, met the judge's eyes steadily, and told the truth. She told him about finding Isaiah and Sarah when she was at her lowest point, about learning to be a mother through trial and error and unconditional love, about the life they'd built together, not fancy or cultured, but real and full of warmth. Sarah Hope Cole is my daughter in every way that matters, Margaret said clearly. I would die to protect her. I would walk through fire to keep her safe. And I will fight with every breath in my body to make sure she grows up knowing she is valued for who she is, not what society expects her to be. Victoria's lawyer stood. Mrs. Cole, isn't it true that you have no legal relationship to Sarah? You're simply her father's second wife. I'm her mother, Margaret said flatly. Legal papers don't change that. And isn't it true that your own background is troubled? That you fled your first marriage under questionable circumstances? Mrs. Blackwell shot to her feet. Objection. Mrs. Cole's past has no bearing on her fitness as a parent. I'll allow it, the judge said. Answer the question, Mrs. Cole. Margaret took a breath. I fled an abusive marriage. I survived. And because I survived, I understand exactly how precious safety and love are. I make damn sure Sarah feels both every single day. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The judge banged his gavel. "Watch your language, Mrs. Cole." "Apologies, Your Honor, but I won't apologize for the sentiment." Finally, the judge asked to speak with Sarah privately in his chambers. Isaiah gripped Margaret's hand so hard it hurt as their daughter disappeared through the door with the judge and a court clerk. 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. When Sarah emerged, her eyes were red, but her spine was straight. She walked directly to Margaret and Isaiah, climbed into Isaiah's lap, and buried her face in his chest. "Whatever you said, little bird, I'm proud of you," Isaiah whispered. The judge returned to his bench, his expression grave. The courtroom held its breath. "I've presided over many custody cases," he began. "Often, the law is clear, but occasionally, the law conflicts with what is clearly right and just." He looked at Victoria. "Miss Hartwell, your concern for your niece's welfare is noted. However, concern shown only when convenient is not the same as love demonstrated daily through sacrifice and presence." Victoria's face went white. Sarah Hope Cole is thriving in her current home. She is educated, healthy, well-adjusted, and most importantly, deeply loved. Her father has provided a stable home, and her stepmother has proven herself a devoted and capable parent. The judge's gavel came down with finality. Custody remains with Isaiah Cole. Petition dismissed. The courtroom erupted. Margaret sagged in her seat, tears streaming down her face. Isaiah pulled both her and Sarah into his arms, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs of relief. Victoria stood, her face a mask of fury, and swept from the courtroom without a word. Mrs. Blackwell grinned. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Cole. Your daughter stays with you." "Our daughter," Margaret corrected, smiling through tears. "Our daughter stays with us." That night, in their hotel room, they lay tangled together, Isaiah, Margaret, and Sarah Hope between them. Sarah had finally fallen asleep after hours of excited chatter about going home. "I was so scared," Isaiah admitted quietly. "The thought of losing her?" "I know, me too." Margaret reached across their daughter, found his hand. "But we didn't lose her. We won, Isaiah. We won because we're a family, and family fights for each other." "Thank you," he said hoarsely, "for being her mother, for loving her like she's your own." "She is my own." Margaret stroked Sarah's hair gently. "Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. Choice does. And I choose both of you. Every single day." Isaiah's smile was radiant, even in the darkness. "Then I guess we're stuck with each other." "Guess so." Margaret grinned back. "Think you can handle that, Mountain Man? With you by my side, I can handle anything." He leaned over Sarah's sleeping form to kiss his wife. "Together." "Together," Margaret echoed. "Always." They returned to the ranch as heroes. The hands had prepared a celebration. Roasted venison, fresh bread, and even a cake that Jack's wife had baked. Lanterns hung from the trees, and a fiddle player from town had been hired to provide music. Sarah Hope ran from person to person, recounting the trial in breathless detail. "And then Mama said I was her daughter, and the judge looked real serious, and Aunt Victoria got all mad and left, and we won." Margaret watched her daughter sparkle with joy and felt something settle deep in her chest. A bone-deep certainty that this was where she belonged. Not on a cliff edge, not in a Denver mansion, but here in these mountains with these people who'd become her family. Isaiah appeared beside her, 2 cups of cider in his hands. "Penny for your thoughts?" "Just thinking about how far we've come." She accepted the cup, leaned into his warmth. "2 years ago, I was ready to die. Now I can't imagine wanting anything more than this." "Regret giving away most of the inheritance?" Margaret laughed. "Not even a little. Money's just paper." "Isaiah, this," she gestured at the celebration, the ranch, their daughter dancing with Running Wolf. "This is real wealth." Spoken like someone who's never had to worry about money. Spoken like someone who learned the hard way that you can't buy happiness, safety, or love. Those things you have to build yourself, one day at a time. She turned in his arms, rising on her toes to kiss him. "And I happen to be very good at building." "That you are, Mrs. Cole. That you are." The party lasted until well after midnight, when the last guest had departed and Sarah had been tucked into bed. Margaret and Isaiah sat on their porch, wrapped in a quilt, watching stars wheel overhead. "I've been thinking," Isaiah said slowly, "about expanding. Not the ranch, we've done that, but our family." Margaret's hand instinctively went to her still flat stomach. "You mean the baby?" "I mean more than that. What if we opened our home to other kids who need one? Kids like you were, trapped in bad situations, needing a way out." His voice gained enthusiasm. "We've got the space, the resources. We could make a real difference." Margaret was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing. Then she smiled. "You want to start an orphanage?" "Not exactly. More like a ranch for kids who need somewhere safe to land. Teach them ranching skills, give them education, prepare them for life. And if they want to stay, we help them get established. If they want to leave, we send them off with skills and confidence." He looked at her anxiously. "Is that crazy?" "It's the least crazy thing I've ever heard." Margaret kissed him soundly. "Let's do it. Let's build something that helps kids like I was, like Sarah might have been if you hadn't found us." "Together?" Isaiah asked, echoing that first crucial question. "Together," Margaret confirmed. "Always together." They started small. One teenage boy from Denver, whose father had died and whose mother couldn't feed him. Then a pair of siblings orphaned by influenza. Then a girl fleeing an arranged marriage. The ranch grew to accommodate them all. Extra cabins were built. A schoolhouse was added. Margaret oversaw education, while Isaiah taught ranching skills. The older kids helped with the younger ones. And slowly, a community formed, bound not by blood, but by choice and shared experience. Sarah Hope, now 10, took her role as big sister seriously. She taught the newcomers to ride, showed them the best fishing spots, and fiercely defended them against any outside criticism. "They're my family," she told the town busybody, who'd suggested the ranch was becoming too crowded and chaotic. "And we take care of our own." Margaret, watching from across the general store, felt pride burst through her chest. That was her daughter, brave, loyal, and kind to her core. By the time their son was born in the spring, a healthy boy they named Thomas James, after no one in particular, just because they liked the sound, the ranch housed 12 children of various ages. The birth was attended by half the kids, who waited anxiously outside the cabin until they heard the baby's first cry. "We have a brother," Sarah Hope announced, racing to tell the others. Isaiah cradled his newborn son with the same tender care he'd shown Sarah, then looked up at Margaret with shining eyes. Thank you for all of this, for making our family something bigger and more beautiful than I ever imagined. We made it together, Margaret reminded him, every step of the way. That summer they held the first annual ranch gathering, inviting kids who'd moved on to return and celebrate what they'd built together. Former residents came from as far away as California and Texas, bringing spouses and children and stories of success. You gave me a chance when no one else would, one young man told Isaiah and Margaret, shaking their hands hard. I own my own ranch now, thanks to what you taught me. You did that yourself, Isaiah said. We just gave you the tools. No, the young man said firmly. You gave me a family. You gave me hope. There's a difference. As the sun set on that gathering, Margaret stood on the ridge where she'd once contemplated ending everything. Isaiah joined her, slipping his arm around her waist. You know what I think about sometimes? She said softly. What would have happened if you hadn't reached out your hand that day? If I'd taken that final step? Don't, Isaiah said roughly. I can't bear to think about it. I don't mean it's sad. I mean, if I hadn't stepped back, none of this would exist. Sarah wouldn't have a mother. Tommy wouldn't have been born. All those kids down there. She gestured at the ranch below, lights glowing warm against the encroaching darkness. Wouldn't have found their way here. One choice, one moment of courage, and it changed everything. Isaiah turned her to face him, his hands framing her face. You changed everything, Margaret Cole. Not just for me or Sarah, but for every lost soul who finds their way to this ranch. You took your pain and turned it into purpose, your survival into service. His voice thickened. I'm so damn grateful I found you that day. I'm grateful you reached out your hand. She kissed him soft and slow, tasting salt from tears she didn't know she'd shed, and that I was brave enough to take it. Below them, their children, blood and chosen both, began lighting the evening lanterns. Sarah Hope's laugh rang out clear as a bell. Someone started playing a guitar. Voices rose in song, imperfect and joyful. This is legacy, Margaret said. Not money or property, but this. People who know they're valued, who know they're loved, who know they're strong enough to face whatever comes. Or legacy, Isaiah corrected, pulling her closer. Built on the day you took one more step back from that edge, and I reached out my hand. Margaret looked at the ranch, at the family they'd built, at the man beside her who'd saved her life by seeing her worth when she couldn't. She thought about the girl on the cliff, desperate, broken, convinced she had nothing left to lose. That girl had been wrong. She'd had everything to lose and everything to gain. All it took was one moment of courage, one outstretched hand, one choice to step back from the darkness and walk toward the light. If I take one more step, I won't come back, Margaret said softly, repeating words from 2 years and a lifetime ago. Isaiah smiled, understanding the echo, the reminder of how far they'd come. Then don't, he said, just as he had then. But this time, Margaret was already in his arms. This time, she wasn't standing on a cliff edge, but on solid ground, surrounded by family and love and purpose. This time, the words meant something different. A choice to stay, not to flee. A choice to keep building, keep loving, keep reaching out hands to those who needed them. Together, they walked back down the ridge, toward the lights of home, toward the sound of laughter and music and life in all its messy, beautiful glory. Together, always together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Margaret and Isaiah's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.